So Betsy DeVos gets nominated for.
Hi, welcome to Atheist Edge. I'm Courtney here with Thomas Westbrook, and it's really exciting to have him here. Everybody's happy. I think we're just doing a little bit of a Q&A, just kind of getting to know him a little. And for me, I kind of wanted to know what was it about atheism and science advocacy that inspired you not only to become a part of the movement, but to become such a large voice within it?
See, I don't know if I would define myself as just an advocate for atheism so much as an advocate for truth and for, trying to dive into these topics without having, walls and barriers that say, oh, this is dogma, you can't question it.
Right.
Because for all I know, maybe there's some kind of techno-deity that's like some highly advanced alien civilization that seeded life on this planet or created the universe or something. Is that an omniscient, omnipotent God? Maybe it's like 2 steps away. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. I don't know. So, like, in that regard, yeah, I might be, to some extent, a bit of an agnostic to some deistic God.
Right.
But I just want to spread scientific understanding and spread a love of learning and of science that has instilled me with this desire to go out and figure out how the universe works. Because the universe is knowable.
Right. Right.
So it's, at this point I would identify as an atheist because I haven't seen any evidence for any of this stuff. And I've seen a lot of evidence against almost every single major religion that I've studied. And so, I would call myself an atheist, but I'm not just advocating for, hey, the whole world needs to be an atheist. No, the whole world needs to be critical thinkers. Once we have that, I think atheism probably will follow, but as long as people think critically and are open-minded and love science, then that's good enough for me.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. So is that kind of how you would define the term atheist advocacy? Would be trying to convert people to atheism, or is it a social movement for atheists?
I'd say I'm an atheist activist because I'm an activist and I'm also an atheist. But more than that, I usually prefer the term secular activist because I'm an activist for secular government, for separation of church and state, for freedom from religion as much as of religion. And so I'm an atheist and I'm an activist, but mostly I'm an activist for secularism and for science and critical thinking.
And secularism meaning inclusion of all perspectives, right?
But exclusion of religion within government.
Yes,
they can study any religion and practice it all they want, in their churches and in, their homes and stuff. But as soon as they start dictating policy that's not based in, facts and data and science, then I start to take issue with it.
Right. Yeah, so your topics are really versatile to me, and they cover a lot of scientific topics. On your channel, and I was kind of wondering how you research the topic. I guess it depends on the topic itself, but
probably the first thing that I do is I find a topic that I really want to talk about. So for the last 5 or 10 years, I've just been learning all different kinds of material. So I might listen to a podcast on something and I'm like, oh my god, that's so cool, I want to be able to learn more about that to share it. If I'm not passionate about a topic, I'm not going to research it. I might kind of listen to other stuff until I become passionate about it. But if there's something that I think is boring, I'm not going to subject my audience to it. And so I'll go out and I'll take, something like, the fine-tuning argument. This is something that, I heard all the time as a Christian. It was like, everything, all the constants of the universe are fine-tuned for life. This planet is fine-tuned for life. Therefore, there must be a creator. And I was like, okay, that seems like a good argument, but I know it's flawed. And then I would hear all these little arguments here and there, and so I'd start listening to it, and then the more that I would watch debates and watch science-y videos, I would start to see little counters to these arguments, and I'd start to see these little holes in it. So at that point I knew where to look, I knew where to Google, I knew what to search for, and then I would start looking up, all the research papers that, and reading through some of those. I would start listening to lectures by physicists who would talk about these specific issues. And that's kind of how I formed that one. I did one on near-death experiences. That one I probably read more research papers than any other. Like I went through and I kind of systematically read through the research on, what do we know about how the brain works and what happens after, upon death. Are we actually dying? Is it, what's going on? And so, when I take a topic like that, by the end of it, yeah, I've learned a lot more about that one topic where I can actually kind of talk about it. But for the ones that are more, less science heavy, something where I'm just like, hey, here's something that Christians don't understand about atheists. Well, then I'm just speaking from personal experience. I'm speaking from the hundreds of atheists that I've encountered and that I've talked to and that have shared their stories with me, and all the, my religious background and what I'm pulling in from there and what I know that there are and aren't necessarily familiar with. So those ones I don't really research. Those are just kind of, I feel I'm kind of giving value back, but I'm not educating scientifically so much.
Right, yeah. So on the science ones, I guess you cite, like, you'll give links to if people want to learn more about that topic that you presented?
I try to.
Maybe.
I have in some of my videos. Sometimes I'll put screenshots up of the paper that I'm, pulling it from. So I might be like, okay, there was the Fleischmann-Pons experiment back in the early 90s where they thought that they had discovered cold fusion. And I'm mentioning the name of the authors of the study, and I'm showing it up on screen, but I'm not actually putting a link in the description, just because there's so much stuff that I'm going through.
Yeah.
And you have kind of a limited amount of space in the description. Other times I do link to, like I might have just a link to like a Google Drive and I'll have some sources. Sometimes I forget to altogether just because I'm like, you only have so much time in a day.
So switching gears a little bit, I was kind of wondering about this internet personality thing, because you see a lot of people giving educational videos on YouTube, especially around these science and atheism topics, and sometimes they'll go through the mill of the philosophy terms and all of that, and then they sort of taper off to being like personalities, more so than like staying educators consistently. And so do you ever worry about becoming more of an internet personality than you are contributing to the movement? And how would you prevent that from happening?
I'm not too concerned about that because, I've always hated drama. And I've had many opportunities to be a view whore and to just do things to, just response videos and takedown videos and stuff like that. Like, yeah, people see that, and every time that you make a takedown video, some other bigger channel feels obligated to respond to you and to save their reputation. And it's can I just swear on the show? Like, it kind of turns into a shit show. Yeah. And it's just you're flinging stuff at each other, and it's not constructive, it's not informative. It's I want to actually give value to my audience and not just create kind of a, small little bubble of people who are famous for being famous. Yeah. And
because you do see that.
If I run out of stuff to talk about related to, atheism, philosophy, history, science, I don't think I ever will. Yeah. Because I can make hundreds of videos and still have not even scratched the surface. But if I do run out of things within this niche, or if I get tired of talking about atheism and religion, then there's a million other things that I can branch off into. So I have, a tech startup idea that I've kind of wanted to crowdfund and kickstart. I've had the podcast that I'm doing, it's kind of shifting gears to be more about big ideas and science rather than just about like atheism and religion and some of the harm that's caused and why this stuff's wrong. Like, I want to look at the bigger picture. But when I do that, I'm expanding my bubble out and also the net of people who I can bring on shows like that and interview. Right. So right now, let's say that I want to get someone who is, a renowned neuroscientist on my show. Well, let's say that I want to talk to someone like V.S. Ramachandran. He's a neuroscientist, brilliant guy, but even though he's not really religious himself per se, I don't know that he would necessarily want to go on a ton of atheist channels, small YouTube atheist channels, because that might look bad or it might tarnish his reputation, or people are like, oh, he's just promoting, some radical version of atheism. But if there's a channel that it's the same exact staff as the same exact person who's interviewing him, but it's on a science podcast, then he's like, oh yeah, I'll go and you know, talk on some science podcast. So your opportunity, like, you increase the size of your nets of who you can actually engage with by making it a little bit broader than that.
Yeah. So speaking of collaboration with other YouTubers, how have you benefited? Have you branched out more through collaborating with other YouTubers? And I've seen you do a lot of stuff with Cosmic Skeptic and people in the UK, I think Australia too.
The only person from Australia I can think of was I was on the Common Heathens podcast, and Mr. Oz Atheist is in Australia. Other than that, I'm trying to think who else is.
Is it mostly because you were on Cogdis?
Yeah.
Oh, blew my mind. But
actually, you're gonna appreciate this because you're a big fan of Cara Santa Maria, right? So one of my next videos, I'm doing a 2-part interview that I'm releasing that I just did with her.
Ah, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
Where is she out of?
Los Angeles.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm a huge fan, but I don't really keep track of anybody at all. I mean, I love her because she's a science communicator, and that's what you do too. So it's really exciting. But I mean, like, do you feed off of the I guess the collective knowledge that's accumulating from the different atheist channels, and do your arguments change based on that collaboration you do with them?
Oh yeah, I definitely have grown by having engagements. You know, talking with people, hearing, you know, watching some of their videos and stuff. I can't keep up with all of them just because there's way more than people realize. Like, I've tried to kind of bring people together because I think around when it was like, I think from 2008 to 2012, there was like this huge surge and spike in like atheist YouTubers. And then they all became like internet personalities, and they kind of shifted away from atheism, and some of them stopped making videos altogether. Some of them just started talking about drama and infighting and social justice and feminism. And I'm like, okay, like, those kind of channels, like, that's cool if that's what you want to do. Yeah. But right now, there's a need. There's, you know, in 2016, when Donald Trump got elected and started filling the White House with theocrats, and all of our public policies start, you know, being geared towards promoting, you know, denying climate change, denying evolution, you know, denying science, trying to roll back a lot of these pro-science programs, cutting budgets, massive budget cuts for research and development, for science education, for, you know, and this is huge. And then they're putting people like Betsy DeVos in office, who's, you know, saying, you know, okay, what, she's going to be in charge of education, and she thinks that the Earth is 6,000 years old? I know. It's freaking insane. And so...
I mean, the sex ed alone,
there's a void
on that is just damaging. Oh, damaging.
There's a void where if people think that the biggest threat to America and to, you know, free speech and to the, you know, the free exchange of ideas and to combat, you know, this science denialism. Yes. That if they think that the biggest threat is, you know, oh, there's, you know, some feminazi who, you know, is just going apeshit, you know, in some college campus. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, you know, yes, I believe in free speech. Yes, I believe that, you know, if a professor puts forth an idea that's based in science that isn't popular, it should still go forward. And I think that political correctness can get out of hand sometimes. But do I think that that's the biggest threat right now to American progress and free speech and development? No, not even by a long shot. And so there's this void of, you know, within YouTube, on, you know, Facebook, any social media platform, you know, alternative media, we need to have these voices springing up and exploding that are willing to challenge this theocratic narrative. Yes. And it's just not happening at the level that it should. And when I talk to people who maybe are a little oblivious to it, they're like, oh no, like, you atheist YouTubers, you won that battle back in 2012. I'm like, no. The dragon was sleeping. We should have slain the dragon. Yeah. Because it's coming back now, and it's coming back with a fury. Yeah. So, you know, what I've been doing is I've been trying to pull together YouTubers, and I've made like a group right now of about 40 YouTubers, and that group has resulted in tons of collaborations and growth, and it's like a rising tide floats all boats. Like when you're doing shout outs and engaging and collaborating, all the channels are growing.
Yeah.
And so I've definitely benefited hugely just from being able, if not for channel growth, just being able to have those experiences. It's been really beneficial for me.
Yeah.
But I think that it's made all of us kind of come together, and it's built a more close-knit community, and that's what we need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember you talking about in previous interviews, your family sort of not being on board with you with this, and I was wondering kind of how whether it's your relationship with them has benefited or worsened from the success of your channel as it grows.
Initially, definitely worsened because they saw it as kind of an insult and a slight and didn't understand it.
Yeah.
My parents, though, like they do tend to, they try to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, and they try to empathize and understand. I spent a couple days with my dad this last summer, just going, doing a float trip down the river, camping, talking to him, and he asked me, just kind of point blank, he's like, I'm curious why you don't believe anymore. Just tell me, explain it to me.
Yeah.
And that was huge. A lot, like most people don't do that. Almost every single religious person, friend or family who I've talked to, they're just like, well, we just don't understand. How could he do this to us? We feel so betrayed. He must just hate all Christians. He must have had some traumatic whatever. And they'll jump to conclusions, but they don't actually sit down and be like, okay, explain it to me.
Right.
So at the end of that conversation, he didn't agree with me. No, like I didn't expect to change his mind. Like he has his whole entire lifetime invested in this belief system.
Yeah.
The sheer amount of cognitive dissonance that you build up to protect the investment, because loss aversion is a huge thing. We don't want to feel like we've wasted our whole life. We don't want to feel like we've lost that entire investment, even if we have. So we'll throw away the entire rest of our life on an idea.
Yeah.
In order to delude ourselves into thinking that we haven't wasted something.
Yeah, because it's the alternative is scary and worse, I guess, in their mind at the time.
But I think
though it's really not.
I appreciated him doing that, taking the time to talk to me. I appreciated being able to have that conversation, and I think because of that, because of subsequent conversations, that actually is beneficial to our relationship. It shows that I'm not just a cookie cutter offshoot of my parents. I'm a different person with different ideas and different beliefs, and being able to have that and still have a relationship, that's huge.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many parents I could say would do that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I was lucky enough with my family to not have too much of a pushback from them, but my dad was sort of not really understanding what atheism was for me, and hearing me listen to all these podcasts and stuff, and he was like, he didn't really understand why I was so interested in it or why it was so important to me. And I sat him down and I had him watch the Why Are You Atheists So Angry with Greta Christina. It was just her speech that she gave before she wrote the book. And at the end of that, he really understood why certain values that I have are being expressed through this, I guess, this movement, and how many things, the reason that I'm so passionate about it. And he was like, well, Christians, a lot of Christians would agree with a lot of this stuff too. And I'm like, yeah, that's the point. It's a human thing of being angry that all of these things happen to people within the faiths, and outside of the faiths, but more so within the faiths, in the names of these religions, and it's really sad. But unfortunately, like you were saying, months later, I overheard him explaining to somebody else why he thinks I'm an atheist. And it was that he knows that it started when I went to India, and I was sort of hit with the fact that whatever I believed was because of where in the world I was born and when didn't make any of that true, per se. And so, but to him, the way that he rationalizes it with his cognitive dissonance is that I went to India and my heart was broken by what I saw, and so I couldn't accept God back into my heart because God is love, and my heart was broken. And I was like, oh wow, it's just this mind bend that it's this rationalization that makes everything that's you're confronted with fit into what's going on.
Well, I get this a lot, like whenever I travel, is like, you will go and see all kinds of stuff, and then you return only to find that everything is exactly how you left it. But everything is different to you because you're seeing things from a whole new perspective. And your dad is never going to completely understand that because, it's only when you're looking at through the looking glass from the other side that suddenly you're able to kind of see with that certain amount of clarity that, like, whoa, when I juxtapose this culture with my own, and I see all the things that look absolutely crazy that they're doing in the name of religion, or that they claim to believe, and the similarities with just tiny little minute differences, but how absolutely absurd it is when you take it out of the context of, my indoctrination and my upbringing.
Right.
Then, you're able to see that because you've had that experience. Mm-hmm. Your dad hasn't. And so for him, it's never going to make sense unless he's kind of had that experience. But I definitely think that there's, it can be difficult having these conversations with family members, but it takes empathy and understanding and time. You mentioned the video Greta Christina's Why Are Atheists So Angry? I made a video, kind of a short animated video about why are atheists so angry, and I concluded it with, if we seem angry, it's because we give a damn.
Yeah.
It's because we care about humanity, and these are values that everyone should be fighting for. And honestly, Christians should be pissed off too.
Yes.
Muslims should be pissed off too about these same issues.
Yeah.
Because these are things that it's slowing all of humanity down. It's hurting scientific progress. It's leading to massive amounts of suffering and pain and horrific things.
Yeah.
Imagine how many diseases right now, if rather than blocking stem cell research, if we had said we're going to throw billions of dollars at this problem and we're going to figure out exactly how to fix all of these diseases, there are people today who are dead, who died because they had time-sensitive critical illnesses that could have been cured already, and they're not, and people are suffering. And so, there's huge legitimate reasons why people should be upset that their religion is doing this.
Yeah.
And so, I come at it from a different approach where I'm like, I don't believe in the religious aspect of it. They do. But I think both of us should share that certain common humanity to have, to be pissed off about this stuff. And they should be doubly pissed off because someone is taking their religious beliefs and their faith and using it to push this horrible agenda and to, push these incredibly regressive ideas.
Yeah. Being like a radical, nationalized, sheep is becoming like a badge of honor sometimes in the U.S. and it's scary.
Well, I mean, the Christian mascot is a sheep in a way. But
but meaning like
he's the good shepherd, and separate the sheep from the goats, and but I think that,
and like politically too, though, that
there's mental blocks that whenever we take on a belief, like we don't just say I believe in the Christian Bible. We say I am a Christian.
Yes,
it becomes an identity. It becomes a part of who you are. And once you do that, that's a dangerous step because suddenly you've made this emotional leap where you're not, if you think of all of your beliefs like arrows in a quiver, your quiver's your identity. The arrows you can swap in and out, and you can be like, well, this one's garbage, this one's good, and I'm gonna kind of, this one I test, and it's a good belief. I'm gonna hang on to it. And so when a Christian comes along, I don't think that it's that they don't want to be critical thinkers. I just think that there's an emotional block there, and that they're trying to protect their sanity. And it's it's been so ingrained in them. They're like, this is my life, this is my church, this is my community, this is my fellowship, these are my friends. Like, they can't all be wrong. Like, my entire world would fall apart and crumble.
Right.
And that's not true. Like, you can question this stuff and be like, well, I don't really buy it, but I still love all you guys and stuff. And I want to create a world where we can have that, where some people can believe stuff and some people can't, but like, we all value each other's humanity, and regardless of, different ideological differences.
Right. The internet seems to be an avenue for education and teaching critical thinking to young kids, because anything you find on the internet, younger kids are learning more and more that just because you found it on the internet doesn't mean it's reliable, so you have to kind of research it. But it seems like what it is now is creating these echo chambers of information tailored to your previously held ideas, and so it's creating a much worse version of what already happens with our confirmation bias.
Well, I've said before that like the internet is where religions go to die, but I think that there's a caveat that needs to be made there, and that's just having a massive amount of new access to information isn't the solution.
Yeah.
Like that's now before you would have, you know, if you go to some, you know, small tribe in, you know, Nigeria or something, and maybe they've never had access to any of this stuff, and maybe they've, you know, their entire family and friends have told them never to question, you know, if you're in like northern Nigeria, it would be the Quran. If you're in southern, it'd be, you know, the Bible. But if they're in, you know, their family and friends have told them never to question it, and suddenly they get access to the internet for the very first time, and suddenly they're able to view a viewpoint that they never thought even existed, then yeah, you're going to have a certain amount of, you know, increase in, you know, secular thinking, and you're going to have a small bump in people who are, you know, actually promoting these rational ideas. But what we need is critical thinking.
Yeah.
We need people to learn how to think rationally, how to think logically. We need to promote logic and reason and science, and like to show how the scientific method works, how the scientific community works. What are the weaknesses in the scientific community? How can we strengthen those areas? How can we make it better? How can we, you know, actually get to the truth in the most efficient way possible? And when you teach people how to think differently, when you show them that all of this stuff, the universe is knowable. It's not just something that you can't test or you can't find out about. You can actually go and take and measure and examine and study and have, you know, try to replicate these tests and experiments. And, you know, the fact that we can learn this stuff and that, you know, learning how we can learn it, that's important. So yeah, the internet is giving people new access to information, but it's not just the information, because you have fake news, you have yellow journalism, you have all of these sites that are promoting all kinds of weird propaganda and conspiracy theories. But when you teach people how to think and not tell them what to think, then you've already done half the job for them.
Right. If there's kind of one single like resonating message that you want to leave with your viewers, or you want them to learn from your entire time on YouTube, is there anything that kind of shines through as the one thing that you want to kind of, if they don't get anything else?
I want my viewers to dare to be curious, because we have so demonized thinking outside the box and creativity, and we have so ingrained in people that curiosity killed the cat, don't go against the flow, you know, just memorize rote answers that you can spit back to your teachers, you know. And it's like we've industrialized the education system. We've told people what to think. We've told them not to doubt, not to ask questions, not to, you know, doubting Thomas is the bad guy. And that's bullshit. People need to be curious. They need to when they start to learn about the cosmos and they start to learn these amazing facts and these wondrous, incredible things, you know, all it takes is a little sampling. And I don't know what it'll be with me. Maybe I'll talk about, you know, neuroscience. Maybe I'll talk about astrophysics. Maybe I'll talk about philosophy. And maybe one of those topics will spark some curiosity in someone, and they'll just be like, whoa, like mindgasm. I have to go and study that. I have to go and learn more about this topic.
Yeah.
But they have to realize that curiosity is a good thing. That's how society progresses. That's how we grow. That's how we build new things. No, everything that it can ever be invented has not yet been discovered.
Yes.
There's so much more out there. And I want people to just have this insatiable epistemic drive to just learn. So, dare to be curious.
Yeah, I think that's what I love most about Radio Lab, because they're really exciting and they're, you know, they're more general science than anything to do with religion at all. But their entire screening process for topics is like oh, that's so cool, you know, the topic. Do you know Radiolab?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's love
NPR, isn't it?
Yeah, it's part of NPR. Yeah. I think it's based out of New York. So any other like podcasts that you listen to?
Podcasts?
Like maybe outside of your topic?
Yeah, I love the You Are Not So Smart podcast by David McCraney. Waking Up with Sam Harris. I love How Stuff Works. They have Stuff You Should Know. They have what is it?
History class.
There's like 60-second science is one. There's, I mean, just any science that's teaching, or any podcast that's teaching some big idea or scientific thing. You know, TED has their radio podcast edition and stuff. But yeah, I want to learn. I want to know more about how stuff works. It's fun. You know?
Yeah. Where can people find you?
Well, the main thing, all my stuff is on holykoolaid.com. So I have a bunch of resources there for people, you know, if they want to get plugged in with a local community, find a podcast, watch my video archives. But my channel is Holy Koolaid, and I'm all over social media. But holykoolaid.com.
Any new exciting shout outs you want to give, like up and coming channels?
Up and coming channels? Well, there's one called Atheist Edge. I also definitely check out Rationality Rules. Very, very quality show, and he just upgraded his mic and camera and everything. Like and his arguments are spot on. Excellent show. Also Rachel Oates on YouTube. Check her out. If you think that every atheist is an angry, crazy firebrand, you'll be, you know, that will throw a wrench in your perception. But yeah, those are two big ones. Definitely go check out.
All right. Thanks, Thomas.
Cool.
So this has been the Atheist Edge. Courtney, Thomas.
Unless you want me to be like, hi, we're Atheist Edge.